I'm going to discuss frame rates and a couple of issues which you can get from frame rates. Frame rate issues will generally crop up most with either stop motion or traditional animation. They won't affect cutout as often, but when you mix in live action or cutout with stop motion or traditional animation, you will very often get frame rate issues, and you'll always need to pay attention to how you deal with your frame rates if you're using traditional animation. You should decide what frame rate you're going to use before you start a project. If we go to Scene Settings, which is under X Sheet, and we change the frame rate, what you'll see is the frame rate actually has no influence on the scene. So with OpenToonz, you're going to want to set your frame rate before you set anything else, because it is not going to rescale automatically if you change the frame rate. I'm going to leave the frame rate at 24 frames a second, which is the standard for traditional animation. Now, traditional animation will often be done on 2s, and that means a lot of your work will be done at 12 frames a second. The main type of animation to be done on 2s, other than traditional cell animation, would be stop motion, and stop motion is almost always done on 2s. The problem with having frame rates at 12 frames a second is you will not always be creating movement at 12 frames a second within the package. So if we have a simple scene, a character walking with a scrolling background. In order to create the illusion of the character going this way, we will basically scroll the background. So we'll generally have a larger background, and we will move that background. And the problem which you will have is that if this character is animated in 2s, the background can be moving on 1s. So the background can be animated at 24 frames a second, where the character is being animated at 12 frames a second. And this can cause problems. I'm going to attempt to show you what kind of problems it can cause, and also show you how, if you're moving the background, you can adjust what frame rate the background is moving at if you're having issues. So what we have here are 2 circles, and if we play the animation, we'll see it's a very basic animation of straightforward backwards and forwards movement. Now, both of these are going at 24 frames a second, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to make the one go at 12 frames a second without changing any of the keyframes. And the way to do this is through the function editor. Here we have the function editor, and I'm just going to open column 3, and I'm going to open the curve for column 3. Now, in order to make this ball move on 2s, what we're going to do is we're going to click here, and we're going to go step 2. And this is now going to move according to the curve, but it is only going to move on every second frame. Now we'll play again. What you'll see is, despite the fact that the circles are actually doing exactly the same animation, that the difference of having one of the animations move every 2 frames and one of the animations move every 1 frame is quite dramatic. So what will be happening here will be, if we go through slowly, you will see that the one ball will move every second frame. And this delay causes a stuttering effect. You'll see this occasionally in ending credits, where you have scrolling text, where the text will have an illusion of flickering, which is very often due to the text scrolling at a faster rate than the background animation behind it. So if you ever are doing an animation with a scrolling background that feels like it's flickering, this would be one of those main reasons you will get that flickering. So if we have the situation where we're getting stuttering due to having two objects moving at different frame rates, there are two options which we can use to try and alleviate this. First would be to go to the function editor, to select the column that we want to edit, which would be the horizontal movement, and to step that function. So if we were to step that at every 2 frames per second, as you can see in the function editor, it now holds the value for every frame. That could alleviate some of the problem. The problem is that you actually lower the quality of all the animation, and you are trying to find ways to simulate things at a higher frame rate, not at a lower frame rate. So the other option which you would have would be to actually animate this character moving forward. And it does not have to be by a huge amount, but even a small amount can offset the stuttering a little bit. So what we would do is we would just set a frame at the beginning and the end, just move it forward a little bit so that the entire walk cycle moves. Now it won't be very noticeable for this walk cycle, but this will now lead to each frame being slightly offset from the previous one. As in with this level, it's not easily noticeable, but it can offset the flickering.